Hey guys, tonight we're going on a little time travel adventure. Don't worry, no machines or paradoxes involved. Just you, your imagination, and a slightly musty toga that doesn't quite fit. Because tonight you've woken up in the heart of the Roman Empire, not as a senator, not as an emperor, and definitely not as one of those wine-sipping aristocrats reclining on velvet. Nope, you're just there, possibly barefoot, definitely confused, and already sweating. You open your eyes to the brightness of a Roman morning. Birds are squawking from the rooftops, someone's shouting about olives, and your back is aching from a night spent sleeping on a floor that may or may not be shared with several types of lizard. Welcome to the Eternal City, sometime around the year 117 CE, during the reign of Emperor Trajan. Rome is at its peak, which means the empire stretches from Britain to Egypt, and life for most people ranges from uncomfortable to please Jupiter, just strike me down already. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, leave a comment with your location and what time you're tuning in from. I love seeing who else is dozing off to a bit of crumbling aqueduct trivia. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. First things first, you're awake, but nobody is bringing you coffee. That isn't a thing yet. Instead, you hear a neighbor loudly clearing his throat and heading out to use the local public latrina. The smell wafting in from the open window is something like garlic, sweat, and the distinct note of too many people using the same sponge on a stick. You stumble outside into the alley. The air is thick with smoke from morning fires. Chickens peck freely through the streets. A goat stares at you like it knows you're from the future. You walk past brick tenement buildings, stacked 5 or 6 stories high insulae, they're called. Most are so rickety that local laws forbid you from building them too tall. But as usual, those laws are mostly ignored. If you live on the upper floors, you're hauling your water up in buckets. No elevators, no plumbing, no hope. You spot a nearby Roman citizen, a man in a short tunic, sandals worn thin, and a heavy bag slung across one shoulder. He nods to you, then spits in the street. That's basically a friendly greeting. You glance down at yourself. Your tunic's a bit short, and your belt doesn't match. People are already eyeing you like you might be a runaway slave, and you're not sure, but you think a child just hissed at you. You try to orient yourself. There's a bakery on the corner, already surrounded by a line of grumpy patrons. Bread is life here, but so is standing in line to argue over who stole whose olive ration. Rome's food distribution system is famously bureaucratic. If you're a citizen, you get a grain dole, free flour from the government. If not, you'd better hope you can barter, or flirt with someone in the grain office. And if you're hungry now, well, breakfast isn't really a thing yet. Maybe a bit of leftover bread, a handful of olives, or if you're fancy, some garum, a fermented fish sauce that smells like a seafood crime but is considered delicious. People pour it on everything. You get the sense that if ketchup were invented back then, someone would have mixed it with anchovy brine and declared it holy. As you shuffle toward the Forum, the city's main plaza, you pass temples, markets, and bathhouses. Priests chant morning offerings to Jupiter. Merchants yell prices at top volume. And somewhere, someone is definitely being robbed. You overhear a conversation between 2 elderly men debating the politics of the Senate. One of them is convinced that the grain supply is being sabotaged by Germanic spies. The other just wants the aqueduct repaired. Neither of them notices you when you sneeze and a passing child screams, "Plague," before running off. Here's something you should know. Hygiene in ancient Rome is creative. Public baths are popular, but also a bit of a bacterial roulette. Streets are swept by slaves, but sewage still runs in open gutters. You haven't even seen a toothbrush. You will, however, see a communal sponge. Let's just say, bring your own and never ask whose it was last. And then there's the noise. Rome is loud. Clanging metal, braying donkeys, shouting vendors, marching soldiers, it never really stops. At night, the carts finally move through the city. Daytime cart traffic is banned. So even when you're trying to sleep, you're lulled not by crickets, but by wheel rattle and drunk philosophers arguing about ethics in Latin. By the time you reach midday, you're sunburnt, slightly pickled from bad wine, and deeply unsure whether your sandals are left-right specific. You've managed to avoid getting arrested, conscripted, or randomly sacrificed, which is good. But you've also realized that civilization is mostly just long lines, weird smells, and a lot of shouting about cabbages. And that's just your first few hours. You wake from a short, uneasy nap on a rough wooden bench, half covered by a pigeon-stained awning in the shadow of a basilica. It's still morning in Rome, though the sunlight is already reflecting off the stone walls with the intensity of 1,000 judgmental grandmothers. Your mouth tastes like old olives, and you have a feeling your tunic has somehow gotten dustier in your sleep. Today's first challenge, figuring out what time it is. You look around. No clocks, no bells, no friendly sundial app on your phone. Just the sun somewhere between too bright to stare at and not quite overhead. Romans, for all their genius, were surprisingly chill about precision timekeeping. The day is divided into 12 hours of sunlight, but those hours get longer in summer and shorter in winter. So an hour in December might be 45 minutes, while one in July drags on for 75. And no, nobody can tell you the exact time. You ask a passing merchant when the forum opens and he shrugs, after sunrise, before heat stroke, very helpful. Public sundials exist, sure, but they're only accurate if someone hasn't stolen the gnomon, the stick part, which happens a lot. One senator reportedly ordered a sundial placed in his private garden, only to realize it was calibrated for a city in Greece. For years, his whole household was always late. Even the calendar is sketchy. Julius Caesar tried to fix it by introducing the Julian calendar, which worked great, except when local priests kept tweaking the days for political reasons. You might think it's the 5th of April, but to someone else it's market day, or possibly the day before the nuns, or perhaps the day we sacrifice a cow for Neptune, but only if it rains. The Romans weren't disorganized, they just used time as a suggestion. And don't expect help from any kind of regular bell system. Temple rituals happen at set-ish hours, but they're based on solar cues. Some officials carry little water clocks, clepsydras, but they're mainly for timing speeches. Once the water's gone, you're supposed to shut up. Of course, most orators just yell louder. Meanwhile, you're getting hungry. Again, your belly growls like an insulted lion. Problem is, there's still no meal schedule you'd recognize. The Romans ate 2 main meals, jentaculum, a light breakfast if at all, and cena, a heavier dinner, usually eaten late in the day. In between, some folks had a snack, but it wasn't formalized. You ask around, and someone tells you, eat when your shadow is taller than your foot. Not ideal. You finally spot a baker pulling flat loaves from a clay oven. You hover nervously. He eyes your tunic, your lack of coins, and your general aura of confused time traveler. But pity wins. He offers a burnt crust and a sniff of wine vinegar, what counts as breakfast for most plebeians. It's dry, sharp, and deeply unfulfilling. You eat it anyway. One corner of the bread tastes like old bricks. Probably because it is old bricks. Roman bakers sometimes mixed powdered tile into flour to stretch it. It was cheap and gritty. Now, with food sort of in your stomach and the sun creeping higher, you decide to find work. Because if you can't pay, you can't stay. Unfortunately, you're not a Roman citizen, you don't speak Latin very well, and you clearly don't know how to lie about your status. A local official tells you that your best option is hanging around the forum steps and hoping someone needs something moved. That's how you end up lugging amphory giant clay jugs filled with olive oil for a grumpy merchant who keeps calling you new meat. You're paid in dried figs and a copper coin that might not be legal tender. Your back hurts, your sandals are definitely melting, and someone just sneezed on your arm and didn't apologize. Still, there's a rhythm here, a strange, sun-baked hum to the day. People move in patterns you're starting to recognize: dawn rush, market bustle, afternoon lull. A man nearby sings softly while sharpening knives. A girl hands out goat cheese wrapped in fig leaves. A soldier naps in full armor with a cat on his chest. You watch a passing cart with envy. The driver snaps his reins lazily, guiding the mule past a marble statue of Mars, god of war. You wonder what Mars would think of you, limping around with oil stains and a stomach full of dusty bread. Probably laugh, or offer you a spear and tell you to stop whining. But you're still here, still sweating, still squinting at the sun, still trying to tell time by the tilt of your shadow. Rome isn't kind, but it's not cruel either. It just is relentless, loud, smelly, glorious, broken, and deeply alive. And you're starting to realize that in this city, survival means learning not to ask what time is it, but what can I still get done before the baths close and the pickpockets wake up. You wake again, this time not from sleep but from a confused half-daze caused by hunger, sun exposure, and the mild trauma of watching two oxen knock over a cabbage stand. It's getting hotter, the streets shimmer, your feet are raw, and worst of all, you're hungry again. This brings us to one of the lesser-known tortures of daily life in ancient Rome: plebeian cuisine. If you were hoping for heaping plates of roasted boar and wine flowing from fountains, I regret to inform you, you've been watching too many toga dramas. The average Roman's daily menu was more economical. You start the search for lunch, although technically there is no lunch. The concept of 3 meals a day doesn't quite exist yet. The yentaculum you ate this morning was barely a snack. The big meal cena won't happen until well after sunset. Right now, you're in the wasteland between maybe food and not quite food. You stumble into a thermopolium, the ancient equivalent of a street food stall. These pop-up eateries are lifesavers for people like you, workers, travelers, students, and anyone who doesn't have a kitchen at home, which in Rome is most people. The thermopolium is half tavern, half cauldron. The shopkeeper eyes you suspiciously but gestures to the hot food jars built into the marble counter. Today's menu includes lentil stew, pickled turnips, honeyed dates, and pulls, a kind of barley porridge that has the texture of wallpaper paste and the emotional impact of an apology letter. You take the pulls. It tastes like regret. You eat it anyway. There's a man beside you gnawing on a dried eel. He offers you a bite. You politely decline. He shrugs and uses his toga as a napkin. You are no longer hungry. As you sit there, trying not to breathe in the fish fumes too deeply, a young woman orders what looks like a stuffed dormouse. It's roasted, seasoned with pepper and honey, and considered a delicacy. You want to gag. She eats it with a smile and offers a toast to the gods and to good digestion. You sip your watered-down wine and try not to look at the mouse tail on her plate. By now, you're getting a sense of Roman food philosophy. Flavor matters, but cost and convenience rule. Salt, vinegar, honey, and that infamous fermented fish sauce, garum, are added to almost everything. Meat is expensive and usually reserved for special occasions or wealthy homes. Most people get by on grains, legumes, and whatever they can forage, steal, or trade. Speaking of which, a teenager sprints past the thermopolium counter and nabs 2 honey cakes while the vendor isn't looking. The vendor shouts, but doesn't chase him. You get the feeling this happens a lot. There's no formal police force in Rome, just a mix of private guards and occasional brute justice. You make a mental note not to try your luck unless you really want to end up tied to a post in the marketplace. After your meal, such as it is, you wander toward a fountain to rinse your hands. The water's cold, surprisingly clean, and slightly metallic. Rome's aqueducts are truly impressive. Fresh water flows for miles through stone channels, elevated arches, and lead pipes. Yes, lead. Historians still argue whether Rome's plumbing contributed to lead poisoning among the elite, but you suspect the real threat to your health is the lentil stew trying to start a mutiny in your stomach. Back on the street, vendors call out new wares: figs, pine nuts, spoiled olives, and something suspiciously labeled smoked lizard. You keep walking. Eventually, you find a shady spot behind a statue of Minerva and collapse onto a broken column. Around you, Rome hums. A man argues about fish prices. A child leads a goat through traffic. Two women compare sandal straps while a monkey wearing a wreath tries to pick someone's pocket. You close your eyes and breathe. And in that moment, you understand. Life in Rome wasn't about comfort. It was about getting by one bowl of barley, one stolen fig, one overheard prayer at a time. It was a world where luxury and hardship danced side by side, where a senator might feast on peacock tongue while a widow bartered her shoes for onions. You are very much not a senator. You're starting to adjust to life in Rome. Sort of. You've stopped asking for coffee. You no longer flinch every time someone casually drops a live chicken in the street. And you've accepted that sandals are not made for cobblestones. But just when you think you're settling in, nature calls. And in ancient Rome, answering nature is a public affair. Welcome to the glorious, odorous, utterly communal experience that is the public latrina. You ask a passing older man where the nearest one is, and he points down the alley saying, "Follow your nose." Not reassuring. Still, your options are limited. Chamber pots are only for the lucky few with private spaces. For everyone else, it's the latrina or, let's not go there. You arrive at what looks like a modest stone structure, open air, no door, and suspiciously close to a bakery. There's a short queue. Good. You'll have time to mentally prepare. The latrina itself is a long stone bench, neatly carved with circular holes, some large, some very large, spaced evenly across the surface. Below it, a shallow water channel runs, fed by the city's aqueducts. This is for flushing, sort of. You watch as people do their business while carrying on conversations, reading scrolls, even playing dice games. One man is explaining Cicero's legal theories while doing something you definitely didn't need to see. Personal space. Never heard of her. Then comes the part that really breaks your modern brain, the tersorium. This is a communal sponge on a stick. Yes, communal. After use, it's rinsed in a trough of vinegar or salt water, more symbolic than hygienic. You consider your options. You remember that old adage, when in Rome, and decide to just clench and meditate. You sit awkwardly, trying not to make eye contact. The stone is cold. A dog wanders in and immediately pees on the base of the bench. Someone nearby is humming. Another man is reading poetry loudly and with flair. It's weirdly not terrible. In Rome, the latrina is more than a bathroom. It's social space. Business deals are struck, gossip is exchanged, and philosophy debated, all while half-naked citizens shuffle around like it's no big deal. Some historians even argue these public toilets played a role in building Roman community. Others argue it was mainly about keeping the smell out of people's homes. And oh, the smell. Imagine a mix of sour wine, overripe figs, sweat, and ancient ammonia, all gently simmering under a Mediterranean sun you breathe through your mouth. It does not help. When you're done, you pass the tersorium to the next person who thanks you. This is maybe the worst compliment you've ever received. You exit, blinking in the daylight, and stagger toward the nearest fountain to wash your hands for approximately 20 minutes. You want to invent soap. You want to scream. You settle for splashing your face and mumbling oaths to every Roman god with a vaguely sanitary portfolio. Still, there's something oddly bonding about the experience. You shared a latrine with a baker, a senator's cousin, and someone who might have been a gladiator. You're all equals in this one very vulnerable moment. Roman plumbing, for all its shortcomings, does one thing remarkably well. It reminds you that civilization is really just a bunch of people pretending everything is fine while passing around a sponge. As you walk away, you hear someone yell, "Sponge thief," and realize the man running past you is clutching the very tersorium you used. You pray you never see it again. You make a vow. From now on, you'll plan your meals very carefully, stay hydrated just enough, and always carry a long stick and your own sponge. After the ordeal of the public latrine, you've decided that dignity is optional in ancient Rome. You shuffle back through the crowded alleyways, nostrils still haunted, and try to focus on anything else. That's when you hear someone shouting your new favorite Latin phrase, "Servus novus, new slave." Oh no. Before you can say, "Excuse me, I'm just lost," a large man grabs your shoulder. He looks you up and down your worn tunic, sunburnt skin, confused stare, and gives a satisfied grunt. To him, you're just another disoriented body with no visible master. In Rome, that means one thing: property. Slavery isn't some hidden shame in this world. It's the engine of daily life. Roughly 1 in 3 people in the empire is enslaved. It's not racial, not always lifelong, and not always brutal, but make no mistake, it's normal, uncomfortably normal. You're dragged to a small courtyard where a woman sits with a wax tablet and a parrot that squawks, "Cave Canem, beware of the dog." She peers at you like she's shopping for fruit. "Can he read?" she asks. "Maybe," the man shrugs. "You are now part of a haggling process. Congratulations." You try to explain gently that you're not from here, that this is a misunderstanding, that you're actually a history podcast listener with neck pain. She doesn't care. You're handed a broom and told to sweep the atrium. Just like that, you've been conscripted into ancient unpaid internship hell. The domus, wealthy Roman townhouse you've been assigned to is beautiful and terrifying. The floors are mosaics of fish, gods, and geometric nightmares. The walls are painted in bright colors with frescoes of suspiciously muscular deities. Everything smells like wine, olive oil, and ambition. Your tasks begin: sweep, scrub, polish, fetch, fan, pour, repeat. You fetch water from the impluvium, the shallow rainwater pool in the center of the atrium. You fan a napping patrician with palm leaves while he snores. You wipe down a marble bust of his grandfather, who seems to be judging you from the afterlife. You're sent to the kitchen and told to grind grain using a massive stone mill that requires biceps you don't have. You're constantly surrounded by real slaves, some born into it, others captured in war, others sold into servitude by debt. They range from resigned to openly sarcastic. One girl warns you not to break anything unless you want to meet the lash. You laugh nervously. She doesn't. Still, not all is terrible. One man, an older Greek named Diodorus, takes pity on you. "Don't worry," he whispers. "You'll either escape, earn your freedom, or die." Inspiring. He explains the concept of manumission. Slaves can be freed, sometimes after years of loyal service, or sometimes just because a master wants to look generous in their will. Freed slaves become liberti, and while still socially limited, they can own businesses, property, even slaves themselves. Diodorus was once a philosopher in Athens. Now he folds napkins. You also learn about slave hierarchies, how slaves, like you, fare better than farmhands or galley rowers. Some, like scribes or tutors, are highly educated and even respected, but all are legally objects, tools, one bad mood from your master and you're traded for a goose. The day wears on. You've now polished more bronze than you ever thought existed. You've also been yelled at twice for standing incorrectly, and once for breathing too obviously. But something unexpected happens. You start to blend in. You stop flinching. You learn where the broom is kept, how to hold the amphora with 2 hands, how to answer questions with a silent nod. You become part of the furniture. Still, when the lady of the house scolds another slave for not oiling the statue of her favorite god, you fantasize, just for a moment, about sprinting into the street, stealing a horse, and riding off into the Apennines with nothing but your dignity and a sack of lentils. But you don't. Because in Rome, the line between free and not is thinner than you think. And right now, you're just one more stranger with no papers, no allies, and no clue how to escape without getting accidentally crucified. You close your eyes, sweep the dust, count the tiles, and hope tomorrow's luck changes. You wake up sore. Every part of your body feels like it's been personally cursed by an angry gladiator. Your arms ache from scrubbing, your back twinges from stooping, and there's a mystery blister on your heel that's taken on a personality of its own. You've made it through one full Roman day, barely. The sun's rising again, which means it's time to start moving or risk being mistaken for a lazy slave, which is arguably worse than just being a regular one. So you shuffle outside, rubbing sleep from your eyes, just in time to witness one of Rome's most underestimated daily dangers, the traffic. No, not traffic as in rush-hour cars and honking horns. Think wooden carts, shouting vendors, loose chickens, and cavalry patrols all crammed into narrow stone alleyways. There are no traffic lights, no stop signs, not even painted lanes, just chaos and the occasional fistfight involving produce. You try to cross the Via Sacra, the main road through the Forum. A donkey dragging a barrel cart nearly clips your ankle. The driver yells something about watching where you stick your sandals. You nod apologetically and sidestep into a puddle that you very much hope is just water. Let's be clear, Roman streets were not designed for comfort. They were marvels of engineering, sure, straight, stone-paved, expertly drained, but also filthy. Think animal dung, discarded fish bones, greasy puddles from food stalls, and occasional human waste flung from windows. Urban sanitation exists, just not where you need it. Car traffic is restricted during daylight hours to reduce congestion, but that means everything rolls through at night. You finally understand why Romans lived with constant insomnia. It's hard to sleep when there's a wine barrel rolling past your window at 2 a.m. You follow the flow of foot traffic, trying not to get trampled. Pedestrians and pack animals jostle for space. You pass beggars with missing toes, street performers swallowing fire, and a man selling fried dormice on sticks. He offers you one. You pretend to sneeze and walk faster. You reach the Forum Romanum, the bustling center of Roman civic life. It's a maze of temples, courthouses, and statues, some noble, some comically muscular. Senators in white togas stride past you, discussing legal reforms in elaborate Latin. A boy nearby imitates them mockingly, using a cabbage as a scroll. Your sandals are now completely soaked, and you're beginning to suspect one of them is shrinking. You duck into a shady colonnade to rest, and nearly trip over a man lying flat on his back. He groans, sits up, and mutters, "Too much mulsum." You have no idea what that is until the smell hits you. Spiced wine, sweat, and bad decisions. Even standing still feels risky. A group of rowdy youths race by, tossing a ball made of pig bladder. One of them crashes into a passing priest, who drops a bowl of incense and begins cursing in Greek. you edge away before someone blames you. Above it all, in the distance, looms the Capitoline Hill, seat of power and pomp. You can just make out the temple of Jupiter, white columns gleaming, pigeons doing unspeakable things to the cornice. You sigh, part admiration, part exhaustion. To navigate Rome safely, you quickly learn the unofficial rules. Never stand in the middle of the road, unless you want to be used as a speed bump. Avoid stepping on coins. It's bad luck. Also, someone will tackle you for it. Give way to the wealthy. If their toga has a purple stripe, just move. They have lawyers. Don't pet the dogs. They look cute, but they're guard dogs, not fluffballs. Stay alert near fountains. Pickpockets love distracted drinkers. You see a man in a tunic adjusting a brass mirror, using it to shave with a blade while balancing on one foot. Another is flossing with horsehair. Hygiene here is surprisingly creative. Eventually, you reach a market square where vendors are already shouting about fish, onions, and mystery meat. A woman tries to sell you a loaf of bread shaped like a helmet. You buy it, if only for the novelty, and the fact that it's still warm. The crust is rock hard, the center weirdly soft, still better than yesterday's barley porridge. You sit on a low wall, chewing slowly, watching the city pulse around you. Carts rattle, sandals slap. Someone sings an off-key love song. Rome is absurd, loud, dangerous, and completely overwhelming. And yet alive, unpredictably, irreversibly alive. You take a bite of your helmet bread, dodge a passing piglet, and smile. For better or worse, you're here, and crossing the street will never feel the same again. The sun climbs higher over Rome, and with it, your sense of self-consciousness. Because today, someone has thrust a pile of fabric into your arms and announced, "Time to dress properly. Welcome to the world of Roman fashion, where your outfit is a walking billboard for your legal status, wealth, and how much time you spent entangling fabric this morning." You're taken behind a market stall and handed your first toga. You stare at it, it stares back. It's not a garment so much as a small linen battlefield. Made of heavy wool and measuring over 20 feet long, it's less like wearing clothes and more like being consumed by a sentient bedsheet. A helpful stranger tries to assist, but somehow makes it worse. You end up with one arm trapped, the drape twisted around your neck, and a portion of the hem trailing dangerously near what might be horse droppings. Rome has a strict dress code. The toga is for male citizens only. Women wear stolas, which are long, sleeveless tunics, sometimes paired with a palla, a draped shawl that acts like a more elegant security blanket. Slaves, simple tunics. Freedmen, depends on the day. And non-citizens, you probably want to blend in and not make eye contact with anyone from the census office. But back to the toga. Your particular version is plain white, identifying you as a Roman male citizen. Hypothetically, of course. If you were really important, it might have a purple stripe, senators, or be entirely purple with gold embroidery, only the emperor, and very dangerous to impersonate. The fabric itches. The heat is unbearable. Within minutes, you're sweating in places that probably didn't even exist an hour ago. Women, meanwhile, are dealing with fashion struggles of their own. The stola is graceful if you don't trip on it, but the real drama is in the hair and jewelry. Elite Roman women often sport intricate braids, dyed or curled with hot tongs. Some even wear hairpieces made from imported hair. Yes, imported. Blonde hair from Gaul is all the rage. There are no dry bars, but there are slaves who do nothing all day but curl strands with terrifying metal rods. Jewelry is a status weapon. Earrings, fibulae brooches, snake bracelets, and amber beads. The richer you are, the heavier your ears. If you're poor, a single bone pin is considered tasteful. You're just trying to keep your tunic from sliding off your shoulder. You attempt to walk, toga dragging behind like a defeated parade float. The bottom immediately picks up dust, crumbs, and something sticky. You don't investigate. You sit briefly, but realize togas are not designed for sitting. You try squatting, but end up flashing your knees, which earns scandalized gasps from two matrons and a snort from a nearby soldier. You finally settle for leaning against a column and pretending to contemplate philosophy. This works surprisingly well. A passing poet even compliments your stoic posture. Then come the shoes, or rather, sandals. Romans love their footwear. Though comfort is debatable, the calceus is the formal shoe, closed-toed and tied at the ankle, while the solea is the sandal of choice for most daily activity. You're wearing the latter. They offer almost no protection from sharp stones, goat hooves, or chicken-related incidents. Someone offers to sell you a pair of upgraded sandals, imported from Hispania, with extra toe room. You try them. They squeak like a terrified squirrel and pinch your left pinky toe. You give them back. You pass by a tailor's stall, where bolts of dyed wool and linen flutter in the breeze. Colors matter in Rome. White symbolizes purity and upper-class leisure. Red is dramatic. Blue is exotic. Black is for mourning or for philosophers going through something. You overhear a woman complaining that her husband wore the same tunic to 2 different Saturnalia banquets. A younger girl gasps in horror. Scandal is everywhere. You start to appreciate that fashion here is more than vanity, it's language. It tells people where you rank, who you serve, whether you're married, whether you're mourning, whether you're one of those new money types who wear too many rings and have suspiciously shiny hair. And then there's body odor. Romans bathe frequently, thanks to their obsession with bathhouses, but deodorant is hit or miss. You pass a man who smells like rosewater and regret. Nearby, a perfume seller touts a blend of myrrh, crushed violets, and what he calls mystery musk. You back away slowly. By midday, your toga is slipping again. A child helpfully reties part of it, then pickpockets your bread token while you thank him. Classic. You sigh, lift the hem, and trudge on, sweaty, confused, and possibly the worst-dressed citizen on the Palatine Hill. But hey, at least you're not wearing a cursed amulet made of mouse bones. Yet. It's hot. Your toga is melting into your spine. Your sandals are plotting to abandon you. And someone just sneezed directly onto a statue of Hercules. You need relief, not just from the heat, but from the endless swirl of smells, dust, and bureaucratic Latin. Fortunately, there's a Roman institution built for just this purpose. The baths. Or, as they're known locally, the thermae. These public bath complexes are the ancient Roman equivalent of a social media platform. Wellness spa, gym, food court, and debate club, all rolled into one steamy, echoing building with suspicious puddles. You make your way to one of the grander options, the baths of Titus, perhaps, or even Agrippa's if you're feeling brave. Outside the entrance, vendors sell oil flasks, sponges, and suspicious-looking beauty creams. One jar promises to banish bad humors and romantic failure. You resist. Entry is surprisingly cheap, less than a loaf of decent bread, and sometimes even free, thanks to rich benefactors who sponsor bath days to boost their public image. You pay your coin and step inside, instantly enveloped by warm air, echoes, and a smell best described as eucalyptus meets old socks. The first stop is the apoditerium, the changing room. You hesitate, then realize everyone's already stripped down and chatting like it's a town hall. Modesty, optional. You disrobe awkwardly and stash your clothes in a cubbyhole, watched by a boy who looks too bored to be trustworthy. You say a quiet prayer to Mercury, god of thieves. Now begins the Roman ritual of cleanliness. Tepidarium, the warm room. You ease into it like soup. The air is thick, the walls are damp, and your pores immediately open like tiny mouths screaming, finally. People are lounging on benches discussing gladiator odds and grain prices. Someone is eating grapes. No one questions this. Caldarium, the hot room. Steam rises from a sunken bath and the floor is heated by a hypocaust system. Hot air tunnels under the tiles. It's basically ancient radiant floor heating, and it works. You sit, sweat, and try not to faint. A man next to you loudly praises the emperor's new tax reform. Someone else burps approvingly. Strigil time. A muscular man approaches you with a metal hook. Don't panic. This is the strigil, a curved scraper used to remove sweat and oil. There's no soap. Romans use scented oils, rub them on, then scrape them off. It feels like being peeled gently. You try to relax. He hums as he works. You wonder if he takes requests. Frigidarium, the cold plunge. A pool of bracing, nose-punching water. You dip a toe in. Your soul nearly leaves your body. A child cannonballs in beside you, unbothered. You lower yourself in slowly, whimpering like a heroic failure. It is glorious, and freezing, and glorious again. You emerge feeling reborn, less itchy, less sweaty, still confused but at least clean. You dry off with a thin linen cloth that's about as absorbent as a prayer. Then you wander into the lounge area. Yes, the baths have one. People recline, chat, eat snacks, and get mild massages. Philosophers debate ethics while eating boiled eggs. A poet dramatically recites an ode to cabbage. A man offers to sell you second-hand hair dye. You politely decline. Bathhouses are co-ed at times, though often segregated by hour or section. Scandalous behavior can occur enough to earn the baths a slightly seedy reputation among stricter moralists, but mostly they're just noisy, steamy hubs of daily life. If you want to know what's happening in Rome, forget the Senate, come to the baths. You spend a little too long reclining on a bench that might still be damp from the last occupant. You eavesdrop on two women gossiping about a priestess's suspiciously shiny sandals. You make awkward eye contact with a man eating cheese while half submerged in tepid water. And then your clothes are returned, miraculously intact, and you're booted gently but firmly into the street again. The sunlight feels sharper now. The stink of the city seems more distant. Your skin is smooth, your brain is soft, and you could honestly nap on a sidewalk if not for the risk of being mistaken for a statue base. As you walk away, a man bumps into you and mutters, "You smell like a citizen." You beam. It's the nicest thing anyone's said since you got here. The sun is starting to lean westward, casting long shadows down alleyways and over rooftops tiled in terracotta and bird droppings. You're refreshed from the baths, more or less dry and vaguely hopeful, until you remember that you have no job, no citizenship, and no dinner. Time to fix at least one of those. You decide to look for work. Not a career. Not even employment in the way you understand it. Just something, anything that might earn you a scrap of bread, a coin, or at least delay starvation. In ancient Rome, if you're not a citizen, noble, soldier, or successful merchant, you're a cog, a hired hand, and that means joining the day labor pool. You make your way to the Forum Holatorium, Rome's marketplace for vegetables and casual labor. You blend into a group of men standing around with the blank but hopeful expression that transcends time and culture. It's the hire me, I'm desperate, and fairly upright face. A foreman stomps over, yells something about strong backs and weak excuses, and picks a handful of workers, including you. You're hauled toward the outskirts of the city, handed a dull mattock and pointed at a construction site. Your job: move stones from one pile to another. No explanation, no brakes, no sandals with arch support. The sun beats down, your muscles scream. Your toga gets caught on a nail and nearly turns into a toga skirt. A man next to you, older and somehow even sweatier, gives you a pitying glance and says, "First time?" You nod. He just chuckles. You consider crying. Roman construction is a marvel to historians. To you, it's torture. You haul bricks for hours. The supervisor yells when you go too slow and yells when you move too fast. You get blisters. You get dust in your teeth. You get to watch an entire wall fall because someone forgot to mix the lime properly. You get paid with a token good for half a loaf of barley bread and a sour cup of wine. The wine is thin, the bread is chewy, and you are starting to seriously consider a career in non-existence. Elsewhere, laborers in other industries face the same fate. Bakers work through the night so bread is fresh by dawn. Fishermen bring in carts of eels no one asked for. Fullers, those are the guys who clean clothes, work in vats of human urine, which is a natural source of ammonia. You will never complain about your laundry detergent again. And then there are the miners. They never see sunlight, ever. If you're sent to a mine as punishment, that's basically a slow-motion death sentence. You spend your remaining months breathing toxic dust and sleeping in holes. It's widely understood that no one comes back from the mines the same, or alive. Back in your much less horrifying day job, a Roman child walks past and mocks your brick-carrying posture. You whisper an insult under your breath. The child throws a fig at you. Your hands are shaking. Your legs feel like overcooked noodles. You have exactly one coin to your name, small, bent, and possibly fake. You briefly consider using it to bribe your way into a better life. But then remember, you can't bribe anyone if you don't know where to find them or what they like in bribes. Still, you survive. Somehow, you're given a small corner in a worker's dormitory, a communal room filled with the scent of damp wool and stale lentils. There's snoring. There's coughing. Someone is mumbling about stolen cabbages in their sleep. You lie down on a straw mat, every joint aching, and think, maybe tomorrow I'll ask for a different job. Maybe something indoors. Maybe something that doesn't involve gravity. And that's when it hits you. Rome doesn't care if your back hurts, or if your sandals are disintegrating, or if the only thing you've eaten all day is a possibly haunted bread crust. It's not personal, it's just the machine. You're a part of it now. You wake in the dim gray of early morning, knees locked from yesterday's labor, throat dry and stomach already complaining. Your hands are raw. Your feet have entered a complicated emotional state. But today brings a new kind of trouble, not for you directly, but for half the empire's population, the women. You spend the morning helping in a textile workshop, your new assignment, courtesy of a man who declared, "You look better suited to thread than stones." It's meant as an insult. You take it as a blessing. Inside the workshop, the air is thick with wool fibers and the gentle rhythm of weaving. Women of all ages work silently, methodically, spinning, dyeing, folding, stitching. It's calming in a way, but also relentless. This is not a hobby, this is survival. In Rome, the ideal woman is modest, industrious, and invisible, unless paraded for marriage negotiations. Marriage is expected. Work is expected. Having opinions is not. A girl next to you, maybe 13, tells you she's already engaged. Her dowry includes a small bronze mirror and half a goat. You nod politely, unsure how to respond. "It's a good match," she says. "He only has one boil." Women in Rome cannot vote. They can't hold office. They cannot wear togas. That's reserved for men and, awkwardly, for prostitutes. Instead, respectable women wear long tunics and stolas and avoid eye contact in public, unless they're buying bread, asking directions, or telling their husband to stop yelling about cabbages. If a Roman woman wants freedom, she has 3 options. 1. Be widowed and never remarry. 2. Belong to the Vestal Virgins, a lifelong vow of chastity in exchange for legal independence and divine job security. Or 3. Be very rich and very clever at pretending not to be in charge, while actually pulling every string from behind the curtain. At lunchtime, your temporary boss, A no-nonsense matron named Flavia lets you share in a stew of lentils, garlic, and dried parsley. It's fine. She talks about her 3 sons, all training to be clerks, and her 2 daughters, already being scouted for marriage by neighbors who own slightly fewer chickens. You ask casually, what if they don't want to marry? Flavia looks up from her spoon. Want, she echoes. Then she laughs and laughs and laughs. This is not cruelty. It's just the reality of Roman life. Marriages are contracts. A daughter is a vessel for lineage, alliance, and if the gods are kind, male heirs. Love is nice if it happens, tolerable if it doesn't. Still, women aren't helpless. You see them everywhere, managing markets, organizing festivals, even subtly advising their husbands from the shadows. Some run shops. Others manage entire estates while their husbands are away pretending to be heroes. A few, very few, leave behind names that echo through history. You think of Cornelia, mother of the Gracchi brothers, famed for calling her sons her jewels, or Livia Drusilla, wife of Augustus, who supposedly orchestrated the future of the empire with a raised eyebrow and an army of poisoned figs. Historians still debate that part. Power exists, it just wears quieter shoes. Back at the workshop, you hear a whispered argument. A young woman is being married off to a man twice her age. She's crying quietly. Her sister comforts her by saying, "At least he has a roof. The bar is low. The bar is buried." Meanwhile, Roman men are busy being citizens debating in the forum, leading legions, writing tragic poetry, complaining about toga wrinkles. They give speeches about virtue while their wives raise the children, keep the books, and remind them to put on clean sandals before court. It's not all bleak. There's laughter here too. One girl tells a joke about a philosopher, a centurion, and a bucket of olives that makes the entire room snort into their stitches. Another boasts she can finish a tunic in half a day while blindfolded. Someone dares her. She accepts. You quietly bet against her. You help fold a bolt of dyed wool, brilliant red, possibly laced with lead, and realize how much of Rome's glory rests on the backs of people you never hear about in marble inscriptions. Women who stitch, scrub, negotiate, teach, and survive. As the day ends, Flavia pats your shoulder and says, "You're not terrible. Come back tomorrow." You're honored, and exhausted, and increasingly sure that if reincarnation exists, you'd like to come back as a Vestal virgin with an indoor job and access to wine. You walk home past a group of men shouting about military reforms and try not to roll your eyes too hard. Somewhere, a mother is boiling cabbage, a wife is faking interest in her husband's legal speech, and a girl is dreaming of being left alone. Rome marches on, but behind it, always, just out of frame, are the women keeping the whole thing from collapsing into ash and unwashed tunics. You wake to the sound of a child sobbing, and a rooster screaming possibly at the child. Another day in Rome, another moment of sheer confusion. But today, your curiosity gets the better of you, because something's been nagging at you since you arrived. Where are all the children? And when you do see them, why do they look so serious? As you walk through a dusty alley in a working-class neighborhood, you see a group of boys, barefoot, tunic-clad, and deeply engrossed in something. You get closer. It's not a game, it's homework. These kids are quoting Virgil out loud, for fun. You recoil. In Rome, childhood is not the playful paradise you're used to imagining. There are no coloring books, no plush toys, no nap times. Childhood is, quite frankly, a brief training montage before adulthood or death, which for many comes first. Infant mortality is high. If you survive past age 5, congratulations, you're expected to contribute. Boys, if their families can afford it, begin formal education around age 7. That education consists largely of memorization, discipline, and fear. They start with a literator who teaches reading, writing, and the fine art of being quiet. The classroom is usually a rented space or just a shaded courtyard, with benches, wax tablets, and absolutely no recess. The schoolmaster is underpaid and over-cranky. Corporal punishment is standard. Get your grammar wrong, whop. Spill your ink, whop. Yawn too loudly, extra Latin. You peek into a class in progress. The teacher is chanting declensions while the students repeat after him like weary monks. A boy to your left sneaks a glance at a crushed fig in his pocket, clearly dreaming of escape. The teacher sees. The fig is confiscated. You silently mourn it. Girls, meanwhile, usually don't get formal education unless their families are wealthy and unusually progressive. Most girls are taught at home. Spinning, sewing, managing household accounts, and, if they're lucky, how to read. Writing, optional. Rhetoric, unheard of, because who would a woman ever need to argue with? You follow a group of children after school. They're not headed to playtime, they're running errands. One boy buys bread for his mother. Another carries a sealed letter to a merchant. A small girl, maybe 6, negotiates the price of fish like a hardened lawyer. She wins. Play exists, yes, but it's not coddled. Roman children play knucklebones like jacks, but with animal bones, roll hoops, toss balls, and wrestle. They carve dolls from wood, dress up like adults, and imitate military drills with shocking intensity. There are no participation trophies. If you lose, you lose. Try crying and your uncle will probably hand you a stick and say, "Train harder." You pass a house where a father is instructing his son in mos maiorum, the customs of the ancestors. It's less bedtime story and more moral lecture. Be brave like Aeneas. Be firm like Cato. Don't cry unless stabbed, and only if the knife is longer than your forearm. There are no picture books, but plenty of maxims. Life is struggle. Obedience builds virtue. A quiet child lives longer. Still, childhood isn't entirely bleak. Children are deeply loved, especially in elite families. They're named after family ancestors, adorned with protective amulets like the bulla, and celebrated on birthdays with small feasts. But even these milestones come with pressure. At age 14, boys trade their child's tunic for a man's toga and are thrust into public life with the same ceremony you might reserve for graduating university or slaying a dragon. You wander past a group of teenagers preparing for their toga virilis ceremony. One is practicing his bow, another trying not to vomit. You hear a younger boy ask, "Does this mean we get to eat dinner with wine?" His older brother laughs and says, "Only if you don't embarrass the family name." And that's the crux of it. Childhood in Rome isn't about discovery. It's about duty. Kids are tiny adults in training, expected to learn fast, obey quickly, and carry the legacy of their house like it's a particularly itchy backpack. As you sit on a bench and watch a girl teach her doll to pray to Vesta, you can't help but marvel. They are children, yes, but ones already woven into the gears of empire, sharp-eyed, stiff-backed, and ready to recite Cicero before they lose their baby teeth. You sigh. Then remember, your own school days weren't that different, except maybe fewer goat bones. It starts with a tickle in your throat. A dry scratch, nothing serious. Maybe it's the dust, or the pungent air near the fish market, or the fact that you were just elbowed by a garlic-scented man during your 5th public bath this week. But by midday, your head is heavy, your limbs ache, and you've sneezed loudly enough to scare 2 pigeons and a passing priest. You're sick, and you're in ancient Rome. Let's see what that looks like. First instinct: find a doctor. Unfortunately, doctors in Rome are a mixed bag. Medicine is still a chaotic blend of Greek theory, folk remedies, astrology, and optimistic guesswork. Some practitioners are highly educated, others are just good at pretending. You're pointed toward a medicus, a physician with a small shop near the forum. He's also a part-time astrologer and enthusiastic leech enthusiast. You enter his cramped office, which smells like wine, burnt herbs, and possibly lizard. He looks you over with the careful concern of a man wondering if he can charge extra. "You're unbalanced," he says. "Too much phlegm," he recommends. Hot wine with boiled garlic and onion. An enema using warm olive oil and chamomile. A light bloodletting, just to be safe. You decline step 3. He frowns and starts sharpening a copper scalpel anyway. According to Galenic medicine, the human body contains 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Illness happens when these are out of balance, too wet, too dry, too hot, too cold. It's less about diagnosis and more about poetic temperature metaphors. If you're wealthy, you can get treated in your own home with imported herbs, honeyed pills, and dedicated slaves trained in basic care. If you're poor, your options include cabbage poultices applied to your chest, incantations whispered by old women who may or may not be witches, wearing an amulet made of dried weasel parts, for balance, obviously. You're given a concoction made of fennel, vinegar, and aged goat milk. It tastes like failure and regret. You're told to rest. Instead, you're asked to help sweep the courtyard because resting is for patricians with spare couches. Meanwhile, your fellow ill Romans are out in the open, coughing in markets, sneezing near fountains, occasionally dropping in temples. There's no quarantine, no germ theory. If someone sneezes on you, people just yell "Jupiter bless" and move on. You see a man trying to treat a fever with a lead bracelet etched with magical inscriptions. A woman next to him rubs her child with ashes from a burnt laurel branch. An old man drinks warm wine laced with ground emerald, which he swears cured his gout and made him popular with the ladies. To be fair, some remedies have merit. Honey is used to clean wounds. Willow bark, a natural source of salicin aspirin's ancestor, is used for headaches. But for every helpful treatment, there's a horrifying one. Like, say, animal dung salves. Yes, you heard that right. Or treatments involving raw eel, placed under the tongue to cure sore throats. Or even being advised to lick a live frog for toothaches. Historians still debate whether that one was medicinal or just a prank. You hear about the valetudinarium, the Roman military hospital. It's better equipped than anything in the city, but reserved mostly for soldiers. You briefly consider enlisting. Then remember you can barely lift a helmet, much less a gladius. Back at your tenement, your neighbor gives you a potion made of boiled dates, vinegar, and a suspicious root. You drink it. You instantly regret it. Your stomach protests. You lie down on your mat, clutching your sides, hallucinating that Cato the Elder is berating you for being too moist of spirit. Still, somehow, you recover. Your fever breaks, your cough fades, you're weak but alive, and deeply suspicious of fennel for the rest of your life. You limp back outside into the Rome you now see with new eyes. Loud, messy, and incredibly unhygienic. You pass a vendor selling talismans made from mouse skulls and rosemary. He waves one at you and says, "Guaranteed protection against illness." You keep walking. You survived Roman medicine, which is more than most can say, but next time you sneeze, maybe skip the frog. You're feeling better. Well, not actively dying, better, and for the first time since you stumbled into the Roman Empire, you're considering something dangerous: companionship, romance, or at least a shared plate of lentils and a mutual appreciation for clean tunics. Time to navigate the utterly bewildering terrain of ancient Roman dating. You start in the Forum, where statues of idealized gods and emperors strike dramatic poses that no human spine can imitate. You spot a pair of young Romans leaning flirtatiously against a column. He's quoting Horace. She's pretending to be impressed. A nearby chaperone eyes them like a hawk in a tunic. In Rome, courtship isn't romantic. It's a transaction, and often a complicated one. Arranged marriages are the norm, especially among the upper classes. Families arrange unions based on wealth, status, political alliance, and sometimes which neighbor owns the fewest chickens. You're not rich, you're not from a known family, and you don't have a dowry. So if you're hoping to marry into society, good luck. You'll need more than charm, you'll need a miracle, a villa, and possibly a senator's bribe. That said, love does happen, just not the way you expect. You ask a local woman what dating is like. She laughs. It's not dating, it's investigating. You must first find out who her father is, how many uncles she has, and whether her dowry comes with goats. Among the elite, formal betrothals can happen before puberty. Marriages are contracts signed between fathers. The bride may not even attend the meeting. She's informed after, if she's lucky. But let's say you're aiming lower, among plebeians, merchants, or freed people. Here, love has more breathing room. People meet at festivals, temples, bathhouses, or simply overbred in a crowded insula. The rules are looser, the conversations riskier. You try your luck by smiling at a woman near the vegetable stall. She raises an eyebrow. Her mother appears out of nowhere with a ladle and glares at you until you remember an urgent appointment with absolutely anyone else. Still, relationships do blossom. There are love poems etched into walls at Pompeii. Some are romantic, others are less so. I don't care if you're ugly, Paula. Your cooking makes up for it. Marcus was here, so was Julia. Don't tell her husband. For elite women, marriage often means losing legal independence. They become manus, property of the husband. But the legal world is flexible. Some arrangements allow women to stay under their father's authority, sine manu, a clever loophole used by wealthy matriarchs who still want to own stuff. You also learn about divorce, surprisingly common and for citizens relatively easy. No courts needed. Just say, "I divorce you," in front of witnesses, or send a letter, or, in some cases, have a slave deliver the bad news along with your ex's sandals in a basket. Brutal. Adultery, however, is a different beast. For men, it's mostly frowned upon if it disrupts the household. For women, it's legally dangerous. Augustus even passed laws against female adultery, hypocritical, of course, given his own dalliances, but very Roman. You meet a man named Lucius who boasts of juggling 3 lovers. "My wife is a saint," he says proudly. "She only screams on Saturnalia." You don't ask follow-up questions. Homosexuality exists and is openly practiced, though steeped in status dynamics. For a male citizen, it's fine to be the dominant partner, less so to be perceived as submissive. For women, records are sparser, but graffiti and a few scandalous poems suggest relationships between women did happen, just not with the approval of moralists. Back to your situation. Someone has taken pity on you. You're invited to a small convivium, a dinner party hosted by a freedman and his witty wife. There's wine, dates, roasted chickpeas, and lively conversation. You're seated next to a woman named Tullia who asks what you do. You panic and say, "I study grain distribution policy." She nods, sexy. The evening goes well. You quote a line of Ovid. She laughs, or maybe chokes on her fig. You're invited for a walk under the portico. You blush. She offers you a preserved olive. You try not to gag. As the night ends, you offer a respectful farewell and get a knowing nod from her mother, who whispers, "You could do worse." It's practically a marriage proposal. As you stumble back to your borrowed cot, you realize something strange. You've just survived a Roman flirtation. No curses, no arranged betrothal to someone named Gaius the goat merchant, just two people, a shared joke, and a fermented plum. Maybe love can bloom in the dust of empire. Just don't forget your dowry paperwork. You're still glowing, just a little, from your accidental flirtation with Tullia, but today Rome has a very different kind of spectacle waiting for you. Because you followed the sound of drums, horns, and bloodthirsty chanting straight to the most iconic building in the empire, the Colosseum. Or as it's more properly known, the Flavian Amphitheater, a towering monument of arches, marble, and violent pageantry. It can hold over 50,000 spectators, and today it's packed. You don't have a ticket, of course, but you follow a group of vendors lugging trays of nuts and wine and slip inside with them, mumbling something about authorized raisin inspection. Amazingly, no one stops you. Inside, the air is electric. Vendors shout over the din, selling honey cakes, cushions, and what appears to be grilled lizard on a stick. Families argue about seating. Senators glide past in pristine togas, while ordinary citizens elbow each other for a better view. The games haven't started yet, but the energy is building. You take a seat, technically someone else's, but they don't notice, and peer into the arena below. It's a huge oval of sand, blood-soaked from the previous day's events, flanked by trapdoors and elevators operated by an army of backstage slaves. Below the arena is a maze of hypogeum underground cages and corridors that hold animals, gladiators, and stage machinery. A fanfare blasts. The Emperor enters. You can't quite see him from your seat, but you know he's there, probably waving magnanimously, while secretly counting how many lions showed up. The opening ceremony begins. Animal hunts. Men with spears face down wild beasts imported from across the empire, tigers from the east, bears from the north, even crocodiles that look deeply unimpressed by the dry climate. You wince as a man is flung by a bull. The crowd roars. Nearby, a small boy waves a flag and laughs. Then come the executions. This part isn't often mentioned in romanticized history, but it was routine. Criminals, prisoners of war, and unlucky slaves are paraded out. Some are merely beheaded. Others are tied to posts and left for wild animals. It's gruesome, but also highly ritualized, a morality play for the masses. Wrongdoers punished, order restored, or so the state says. You feel ill. The woman next to you offers a grape. You decline. Finally, the main event, the gladiators. Two fighters step into the arena. The crowd quiets. You can feel the tension. These aren't just brutes, they're celebrities, trained in special schools, sponsored by elites, even adored by fans who scrawl their names on walls. One is a murmillo, helmeted and heavy, armed with a gladius and rectangular shield. The other is a retiarius, lightly armored, armed with a net and trident. Speed versus strength, a classic matchup. They circle, feint, strike. The crowd cheers, bets are shouted, wine is spilled. You find yourself leaning forward, breath caught. The retiarius throws his net but misses. The murmillo charges, sand flies. Then, hesitation. The murmillo has the upper hand. The retiarius is on the ground, wounded. The murmillo looks up at the emperor, awaiting the verdict. The crowd gestures wildly. Some demand death, others mercy. You, unsure, raise a single thumb. The emperor tilts his head, then gives a subtle nod. The murmillo steps back. Mercy. The crowd cheers. The retiarius is hauled off to heal, train, and maybe fight another day. You exhale. Rome loves its blood, but also its drama. Gladiator matches are theater, politics, and punishment rolled into one. A way to distract the masses, to reward loyalty, to display power. You leave before the final match. It's too much. Outside, the city buzzes, oblivious to the carnage. A baker sells fresh rolls. Children chase dogs. A man plays a reed flute with surprising skill. You pass a graffiti-covered wall with a rough sketch of a gladiator's helmet, and the words, "Piculus lives, he's one of the famous ones. Rumors say Emperor Nero gave him palaces." You wonder what it's like to be loved for fighting, and whether any of those fighters truly wanted it. Back in your alley lodging, you lie down, head spinning. Rome entertains, but it also consumes. And tomorrow, the sand will be swept, the gates unlocked, and the crowd will come again, ready to cheer, to gamble, to forget. You wake early, heart still pounding faintly from yesterday's visit to the Colosseum. The echoes of cheers and the clash of steel linger in your ears like a bad dream, or, depending on your audience, a great party. But today, things feel quieter, still heavy but less gory. Because now you're about to explore something just as crucial, and possibly even more confusing: Roman religion. You start your day near a small shrine tucked into a wall between a bakery and a wine shop. It's a lararium, a household altar for the Lares and penates, guardian spirits of the home. You watch as a woman offers a bit of bread, a splash of wine, and a quiet prayer. No chanting, no thunderclaps, just gratitude for not tripping over her goat that morning. Roman religion is everywhere and nowhere. There are grand temples, yes, and epic state rituals with bulls and incense. But most of it lives in daily habits: muttered prayers, gestures toward the sky, wearing charms, or carefully avoiding walking under archways on certain festival days. Your first stop is the Temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitoline Hill. It's Rome's spiritual headquarters, dedicated to the king of the gods. You pass through towering columns into a marble chamber thick with smoke and solemn chants. Priests in white robes move in practiced patterns. A man sacrifices an ox. You try not to look directly at the entrails. You learn quickly: Romans aren't worshipping out of warm, fuzzy devotion. It's transactional. The entire belief system is built on do ut des, they, so that you might give. You offer wine so the gods might grant you good harvests, safe travel, or that one senator tripping over his sandals in public. RRIF. You peek at a list of official gods: Jupiter, Juno, Mars, Minerva, Venus, Neptune. It's like a political family tree, with scandals, grudges, and occasional divine grudging cooperation. But that's just the beginning. Each trade, neighborhood, and event has its own set of minor deities and spirits. There's a god for door hinges, one for mildew, one for childbirth, one just for sneezing probably. If it exists, Rome has a god for it, and likely a temple, or at least a clay figurine you're supposed to kiss during full moons. You attend a sacrifice in a small local temple. The victim, a sheep. The method, quick and grim. The priest examines its organs, especially the liver, looking for omens. He announces, "It is favorable." The crowd claps. Someone immediately goes to finalize a grain shipment. You pass by a statue of Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings. He watches over thresholds, and you get the feeling he's watching you a little too closely. Across the street, a group of youths perform a song in honor of Vesta, goddess of the hearth. Her temple in the Forum is round, ever-burning, and guarded by the Vestal virgins, priestesses sworn to chastity for 30 years, under penalty of being buried alive if they break the vow. Casual. Your mind spins. It's all so vast, so layered, and yet so ordinary. People pray as easily as they curse. One woman throws salt over her shoulder while asking Mercury to help her son pass his rhetoric exam. A farmer murmurs thanks to Ceres for a decent barley harvest and then spits for luck. You learn that emperors often claim divine status after death, some even during life. You're warned not to mock this, especially within earshot of guards. One man jokes that the current emperor is half god, half donkey, and is never seen again. As evening falls, You attend a private ceremony at a neighbor's house. He invites a few friends, lights oil lamps, and reads a small prayer to his family's ancestors. The air smells of myrrh and burned flour. There's wine, bread, and a sense of calm you haven't felt in days. Later, someone brings up Christians, quietly. There's still a fringe group here, seen as suspicious, secretive, and dangerous, mostly because they don't sacrifice to Roman gods. You listen, intrigued. As a merchant whispers, they eat together, call each other brother and sister, and refuse to honor Jupiter. It's madness. Then someone coughs and changes the subject. Safer that way. You walk back under the stars, head full of gods, spirits, rituals, and whispery faiths. A dog barks in the distance. A priest lights incense at a crossroads. You pass a beggar wearing an amulet against curses and wonder if it works. Rome doesn't ask for belief the way modern faiths do. It asks for participation. Say the prayer. Give the offering. Don't offend the wrong god. And for Jupiter's sake, don't yawn during a festival speech. That's how you get a plague. And so, before bed, you light a candle at your borrowed lararium. You say a little something uncertain, sincere. Not because you believe, but because in Rome it's better not to risk it. You wake to the sound of loud arguing. Not unusual in Rome, but today the shouting is sharper, more theatrical. You peek out of your doorway. Two men in crisp togas are mid-debate in the street, surrounded by a small crowd. One is flailing his arms and quoting Cicero. The other is holding a chicken for some reason. This, you realize, is politics in the Roman Empire, part Senate, part circus. Welcome to the world of Roman power games, where ambition wears sandals and public image is everything. You head toward the Curia, the Senate House. It's a squat but grand building in the Forum, home to what's left of the Republic's most sacred institution. Once the Senate held real power. Now, not so much. Since the rise of the emperors, senators are like fancy bookmarks, decorative, slightly useful, but easily ignored. That said, the pageantry is alive and well. Senators arrive in droves, draped in togas with wide purple stripes, strolling slowly, speaking loudly. They air grievances, propose laws, honor gods, and carefully avoid saying anything that might irritate the emperor. Because here's the secret. Rome looks like a republic, but it runs like a dictatorship with good PR. The current emperor, let's say Trajan, since we're in the early 2nd century, is generally liked. He's a military man, a builder, and supposedly modest. But don't be fooled. Trajan controls the army, the treasury, the courts, and most of the grain supply. He also has the power to exile, pardon, or quietly erase you from history. Politely, of course. You attend a public oration near the rostra, a stone platform where politicians give speeches to the people. Today's topic, grain prices and sewer maintenance. Riveting. One man delivers a fiery monologue blaming Gaulish wine tariffs. Another calls for new aqueduct repairs. The crowd cheers, jeers, and occasionally naps. You spot a professional client, a man who flatters the powerful in exchange for coins or dinners, cheering a senator he once denounced last week. Loyalty here is flexible. Politics is a daily performance where flattery, slander, and subtle threats are just different instruments in the same orchestra. But the real action happens in private. Behind closed doors, in the shaded peristyles of noble villas, deals are made over wine and grilled dormice. Alliances shift like sand dunes. Favors are traded. Enemies are named. If you want something done, an appointment, a favor, a timely disappearance, you don't go to court. You go to a patron. Patronage is the blood that keeps Roman politics pumping. Every powerful Roman has a network of clientes, lesser folks who support their patron politically and socially in exchange for protection, gifts, and access. It's a social pyramid scheme, but with more laurel wreaths. You try to speak with a local patron about a minor problem, a goat who keeps stealing your laundry. He listens carefully, nods once, and says, "Tell Marcus to handle it." You don't know who Marcus is. Hours later, the goat is mysteriously gone. You don't ask questions. And then there's the shadow of delation, the Roman art of snitching. Informers, or delatores, make a living by accusing others of crimes, especially treason. If the case sticks, they get a cut of the confiscated property. It's lucrative and terrifying. You now understand why people lower their voices when talking about politics. Even in taverns, people speak cautiously. Say the wrong thing, mock the emperor, insult a noble, question a temple budget, and you could end up exiled, enslaved, or worse, forced to debate with philosophers. You pass a wall covered in graffiti. Some is light-hearted, "Lucia was here, she still owes me figs," but some, not so much. There's a scratch drawing of an emperor with donkey ears. You walk away fast. Back at the forum, you hear a man shouting about corruption. He's dragged off by 2 guards. A nearby senator sighs and says, he was good at speeches, poor at timing. By dusk, the crowd thins. Senators disappear into their villas, guards return to the gates, and Rome exhales, ready to repeat the whole political opera tomorrow. You sit by a dry fountain, watching a pigeon peck at a discarded scroll. Rome is ruled by laws, yes, but more than that, by whispers, reputations, and favors owed. It's a place where one wrong sentence can ruin you, and one right friend can elevate you to divine status. You pick a safe, neutral prayer to Minerva, and decide, from now on, you'll keep your opinions quiet and your compliments flowery. Just in case someone's listening. It's just past dawn, and the street is already humming with movement. Vendors setting up stalls, mules pulling carts, a small child loudly announcing that someone stole her fig. You barely register any of it because today you're walking in the shadow of the most disciplined and, arguably, most overworked institution in the Roman world. The Roman army. You've been invited, dragged along by a young legionary named Titus. He thinks you look soft and wants to show you real work. You don't have the heart or muscle mass to argue. You follow him past the forum, through a massive gate, and out to a military training ground, a flat stretch of packed earth where dust and sweat hang in the air like perfume made of punishment. The legion is already assembling. Hundreds of men in leather and iron are practicing drills with mechanical precision. Shields clatter, swords swing. Instructors shout helpful encouragements like, "If you trip again, I'll bury you in your own sandal." The Roman legion isn't just a fighting force. It's an empire on the move. Each soldier is trained not only to fight, but to build roads, dig fortifications, cook, carry their own gear, and march 20 miles a day wearing armor, while carrying equipment that weighs more than your average teenager's to spare. You watch as Titus demonstrates the standard gear. Helmet Gallia, sturdy, uncomfortable, with cheek flaps that make everyone look like confused turtles. Body armor Lorica segmentata, overlapping plates of metal that jingle ominously. Shield scutum, rectangular, curved, and big enough to hide behind emotionally. Sword gladius, short, efficient, and ideal for stabbing in tight formation. Sandals caligae, iron-studded soles perfect for marching and for leaving lasting impressions on anyone's back. You try one of the helmets. It's heavy, smells like sadness, and blocks most of your peripheral vision. You hand it back quickly. Titus explains that soldiers wake before dawn, clean their gear, train, build fortifications, march, then do it all again. Days off are rare, whining is illegal, and punishments, oh, they're creative. Forget detention. The Roman army has decimation and actual punishment where every 10th man in a disgraced unit is executed by his fellow soldiers. It's meant to build cohesion. You decide immediately that military life is not for you. Still, service comes with perks. A soldier is paid modestly, fed usually, and upon retirement, granted land and Roman citizenship if he survives 25 years. 25. You consider how long that is without scented soap. There's also camaraderie. Soldiers live in groups of 8, sharing a tent, meals, and likely too much personal information. They gamble, joke, carve graffiti, and occasionally get into tavern brawls involving fruit. You follow the group on a short march to the river. It's supposed to be light training. Within 10 minutes, you're wheezing. Within 15, you've lost a sandal. At 20, you begin bargaining with Mars, god of war, for a chariot or a mercy stroke. Back at camp, the Legion begins building a mini-fort just for practice. You're assigned to dig a ditch. The shovel is made of wood. The dirt is made of rocks. You make a hole roughly the size of a gourd and feel oddly proud. Titus sees it and laughs for a full minute. Later, a medicus tends to a soldier with a sword scrape. Roman battlefield medicine is rough but efficient. Wine for cleaning, honey for sealing, and prayers to Asclepius to cover the rest. There are no anesthetics. Screaming is part of the therapy. You join a meal with the unit: coarse bread, boiled beans, and something that might once have been a fish. Spirits are high. Stories are loud. A centurion tells a joke involving a Greek philosopher, a goat, and an overly generous senator. You don't understand the punchline, but everyone laughs, so you do too. As the sun sets, the men perform one final drill, a testudo, or tortoise formation. Shields interlock above and around, forming a living tank. You're invited to join. You hold a shield the size of a door and shuffle in step with the others. The sound of marching feet, the rhythmic clang of armor, it's oddly hypnotic. You lower your shield, exhausted, and see the world bathed in orange twilight. There's dust in your teeth, sweat in your eyes, and something unidentifiable on your tunic. But for a fleeting moment you feel it. The discipline, the order, the absolute certainty of belonging to something larger than yourself. Then someone yells, "Who stepped on my cheese?" and the moment is gone. You limp back toward the city, vowing never to complain about modern gyms again. You wake to the clinking of iron and a low murmur outside your doorway. Through the cracked shutters, you spot a small chain gang moving slowly down the alley, heads down, hands bound. No one speaks, no one needs to. It's a familiar sight in Rome, slaves in transit. You've seen slavery woven into every corner of daily life here: servants in homes, scribes in libraries, cooks in smoky kitchens, even those unfortunate enough to scrub bathhouse floors or manage the sponge-on-a-stick situation. But today, you decide to look closer. You follow the chain of captives at a distance as they wind toward the slave market near the Tiber. It's not hidden. It's not quiet. It's a loud, organized business, right next to produce vendors and pottery stalls. Men shout prices. Placards hang around people's necks listing their features. One says, "Can bake," slight limp, very polite. Another simply reads Greek. Literate, not too argumentative. You wince. Slavery in Rome is vast. At its peak, up to 1 in 3 people in the city is enslaved. Some were prisoners of war. Others were sold by desperate families. A few were kidnapped by pirates and shipped across seas. Rome doesn't ask where you came from, only what you can do and what someone will pay for you. You're temporarily employed at a laundry run entirely by enslaved workers. It smells of ammonia and despair. The floor is sticky. The tools are blunt. One girl, no older than 12, shows you how to stir the soaking tub with a long pole. You get used to it, she says, then adds, "Don't breathe through your nose." Slavery here is more than physical labor. Educated slaves work as doctors, tutors, accountants, architects. Some even manage entire estates on behalf of absentee owners. You meet one, a quiet man named Thales, who oversees his master's household accounts. He can't read, Thales says with a smirk, but I'm very convincing. For a few, there's hope of freedom. Roman slaves can be manumitted freed by their masters, often after years of loyal service or as part of a will. Freed slaves, liberti, become Roman citizens, though they still owe public loyalty to their former owners. Some even become wealthy and buy slaves of their own, which is complicated. But most don't get there. You learn about the ergastulum underground slave prisons on rural farms. You hear stories of people who tried to run. Some made it, some didn't. The punishment is often brutal, public, and meant to make an example. Still, you see moments of humanity. In the laundry, someone hums a song you've never heard. A boy draws faces with charcoal on the back wall. A young man offers you a piece of bread and says, "Don't worry, it's better than it smells." You thank him. He laughs. No one ever means that here. And you realize, these people aren't faceless. They're teachers, daughters, veterans, poets, survivors. But the law calls them property, res. They can't marry, own land, or testify in court unless tortured first, because the logic goes, a slave only tells the truth through pain. By evening, you return to your cramped room, your hands raw, your heart heavier. You've watched a system run on silence, sweat, and the legal fiction that some humans are tools. Before you sleep, you pass by a clay figure tucked into a wall crack, likely a small homemade god or charm. Someone's secret hope, maybe for escape, maybe for freedom, maybe just for one more day. You wake stiff and sore, as usual. But something feels different today. Rome is quieter. Not silent, never that, but there's a rural hush in the air, like the city's taken a deep breath and remembered that outside its walls there's a whole empire of dirt, grass, and, apparently, geese. Because today, you're heading out to the countryside. You're traveling with a grain merchant named Publius, who's delivering supplies to a small villa rustica, a Roman country estate that manages both farming and housing. You leave the city gates behind, passing shrines and mile markers, dodging potholes the size of philosophical arguments. The road is well built. This is Rome, after all, but the countryside is a different world. Rolling fields, stone terraces, olive trees lined like sleepy soldiers. You spot a shepherd asleep on a rock, his goats actively ignoring him. After a few miles, you reach the villa. It's not the sprawling palace you pictured. Instead, it's more of a farm-fortress hybrid. Modest house, granaries, small temple, slave quarters, and rows of orderly fields. Wheat sways gently in the breeze. A pig snorts nearby. Somewhere a donkey sneezes. The dominus, or landowner, greets Publius warmly and barely acknowledges you. You're not offended. You're dusty, underdressed, and may or may not be covered in fig jam. You're allowed to stay the night in exchange for light work. Spoiler, it's not light. Your first task, helping harvest grain using a sickle that hasn't been sharpened since the Punic Wars. The sun is merciless. You sweat through your tunic, your arms itch. You're chased briefly by an angry chicken. You meet a young boy hauling bundles of wheat. He introduces himself as Marcus the Lesser and warns you about the snake nest near the fig trees. You thank him and immediately change harvesting zones. At lunch, the workers gather in the shade for a simple meal. Bread, cheese, dried dates, and water with a hint of vinegar. It's rough but refreshing. Conversation is light. One man tells a joke about a farmer, a Vestal virgin, and a runaway ox. You don't get it. Everyone laughs anyway. Life on a Roman farm is demanding. You're expected to rise with the sun, work until midday, break briefly, then return until sunset. Tasks include weeding, planting, threshing, pressing olives, and sometimes catching runaway geese, a job you're unfortunately assigned after a gate is left open. You find the geese find you back. It's not a fair fight. You ask one of the older laborers if life is better here than in the city. He shrugs. The air's cleaner, but the taxes are the same. Rome is relentless even out here, far from the Forum. The landowner must navigate grain quotas, temple obligations, and bribes to inspectors who check for soil honesty, whatever that means. Some small farmers own their land, others lease from noble families. Many work as tenants or sharecroppers, and always there are slaves doing the hard labor, invisible unless needed or punished. The villa also grows vetch for livestock, grapes, and a strange pink herb used to dye wool. You help stomp some grapes. It's fun for exactly 7 seconds before you slip, fall, and stain your toga. The workers are delighted. You're renamed Bacchus Mistake. As evening falls, you help prepare a humble feast. There's a fire pit, grilled vegetables, barley stew, and cheap wine. You sit beneath an olive tree watching the sky fade into purples and oranges. Crickets chirp. Someone plays a reed pipe. You're handed a small cup and a seat near the elder of the household, an old woman who remembers the Republic and doesn't trust the current emperor. Too many festivals, she mutters. Not enough good roads. You nod sagely. She nods back, satisfied. Later, lying on a straw mat under the stars, you feel something you haven't felt in days: peace. The city hums with ambition, pride, and thunder, but here in the farmland, Rome just breathes. And you breathe with it. You wake before dawn to the soft rustling of wind in the olive trees. No shouting vendors, no clattering carts, no donkey choir. Just birds, a gentle rustle of barley, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barking at absolutely nothing. It's your last morning in the Roman Empire. You stretch, wincing as every joint voices its opinion. Your borrowed tunic is stiff with dried grape juice. Your feet are blistered. Your brain feels like it's been rolled in parchment and left in the sun, and yet you feel oddly accomplished. You've survived the public toilets, the terrifying traffic, the questionable food, the unfiltered opinions of senatorial grandmothers, and more than one flying cabbage. You've scraped floors, dodged goats, witnessed blood sport, flirted badly, and slept on enough stone benches to develop a meaningful relationship with your lower spine. And now, with the sun rising on this empire of marble, sweat, and relentless spectacle, you take a final walk through its waking world. Back in the city, people are stirring. A baker lights his oven. A priest mutters morning rites to Janus, god of doorways and awkward transitions. A tired mother yells at her sons to get dressed or she'll make them wear Gallic socks, apparently an insult. You wander past the Forum, where statues of long-dead generals strike eternally heroic poses. A man selling scrolls tries to lure you with hot new poetry from Hispania. You politely decline. You've had enough drama for one empire. You pass your old thermopolium. The vendor remembers you and offers a wink. Still have the taste of barley paste, You nod solemnly, like a veteran. A young girl chases a dog through the street. A boy practices his rhetoric aloud, gesturing dramatically with a fig. 2 slaves whisper jokes behind a cart. Somewhere, someone sneezes and is immediately blessed by 3 strangers. This is Rome, layered, loud, broken, brilliant. You pass a tavern where a man is already toasting to Neptune. It's not even breakfast. The city smells like wine, ash, and ambition. You wonder what it will smell like in 1,000 years. Probably the same, but with a hint of pizza. And then, almost without meaning to, you find yourself at the edge of the city where road meets countryside. You pause, look back. The city sprawls behind you. Domes and dust, columns and chaos. A place of contradictions, where toilets are public but politics are private, where gods live in statues and power lives in shadows, where a fig is currency and your reputation is worth more than gold. You feel your eyes sting not just from the wind. You didn't belong here, not really, but you learned how to move through it. You adapted, you understood, you carried water and held your breath, you tried, and in Rome that's enough. You take one last breath, dusty, warm, familiar. And as the morning mist rises and the olive trees sway, you let it go. Let your body relax now. You've walked across cobbled roads, climbed stone steps, and leaned on dusty walls. Your feet, tired and scraped, can finally rest. Your back, bent by buckets and bricks, can now soften against your bed. Breathe deeply. Feel the weight of the toga, imagined or real, fall away from your shoulders. Let the noise of the forum fade behind you, replaced by the slow hush of distant fields, the rhythmic lull of sandals on earth, the lazy clink of tools left untouched. The empire continues on without you. Let it. Let the senators argue. Let the gladiators spar. Let the poets complain about the weather. Here, in this moment, you are still. The gods are quiet now. The city sleeps behind you. The olive trees whisper in the dark, and every coin clink, every shout, every splash of garum is a memory drifting further into the past. You've survived Rome, and now you can rest. Let sleep come, slow and kind. Let your breath deepen, and may your dreams be soft as fig leaves on marble. Good night.